Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Hopefully, we are going to have a great Friday here on this show. We got a couple MLB picks and props a little bit later on to get you set for hopefully a fantastic weekend. Everybody excited? Last night, we got a little taste of the NFL, a little football action. I was kind of surprised to see Josh Jacobs out there. Not going to lie. Maybe I'm overreacting just a little bit. I was just a little shocked to see him out there on opening drive. And then again on the second drive when everybody else was resting, but not Josh Jacobs. But maybe I'm just overthinking it a little bit. Maybe we'll talk to our guest today about Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. In fact, we will. We're going to continue our NFL team previews, and we are on the Las Vegas Raiders. We're actually wrapping up this division today on a Friday, and we really only have, I think, another division. I think we may have skipped one or two teams. Like, I don't think we touched on the Vikings or the Packers at length. We'll touch on those two teams next week with guests, and we will wrap up the AFC North. We'll get into the AFC North, the Bengals and the Ravens and the Steelers. And of course, the Browns. We'll get into those teams. Then we'll be done. All the team previews, and it feels like football is already here. Sam Choudhury of FTN is dropping by in a little bit. SC_FFB. This guy's just pumping out all kinds of content for us over at FTNFantasy.com. Former employee over at PFF and RotoViz. And I really like his Twitter bio inside. He says, "You take a deuce, you flush it, and you move on." That's from Jalen Hurts last year. Remember one of his brutal games for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, he did have that quote, which is fantastic. So Sam's in here in a little bit. He's doing a high stakes draft tonight with Vlad Sedler, of course, of FTN as well. So we'll get some thoughts on maybe a couple targets of his. Maybe he can share a couple secrets of some guys that he's looking to grab here in the draft tonight. Of course, we will touch on the Raiders, the new look Raiders, the new look AFC West, right? The powerhouse division in the NFL. Devontae Adams is the old buddy Derek Carr. Those two lit it up. And if you're unaware of the numbers that they had in one season, we will address them. It's very video game-like. Adams had numbers that, some wide receivers can only dream about having over a course of 3 or 4 seasons in the NFL. Of course, those were college numbers, but we know Adams is really good at the game of football. And Derek Carr is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. I've said that a few times. So touching the Raiders, we'll get some targets out of Sam. Mike Evans went down today in practice. According to Rap Sheet, he suffered a hamstring injury. He tweaked it. This is not new for Mike Evans, and it's not new at this time of the season for Mike Evans as well. He's had numerous hamstring issues. At the end of the day, this guy does seem to finish, very consistently, 1,000 yards, flirting with 8 to 10 touchdowns. We love the Bucs offense, but good news that Chris Godwin was able to practice today, but bad news for Mike Evans. So we'll talk about that with Sam a little bit, see if he's into Godwin. Is he into Evans still? Evans, maybe, if you're drafting today, maybe he's not going as a top 10 wide receiver. Maybe he falls down just a little bit. Russell Gage is on the squad now. Julio Jones, Kyle Rudolph, no Gronk. So there's actually a lot of different moving pieces happening in Tampa as well. So we are going to talk a lot of football with Sam. I'm going to dive into a little bit deeper into my rankings. I feel like I rushed yesterday between 11 to 20. And of course, it's just me being an awful host here on Game Plus Network, going a little bit too long in the mock draft. But I thought it was good. I had some feedback from some people as well. Maybe we'll do some more mocks. People seem to like mock drafts and gives them a little bit of an idea of value and where these players are going. Of course, we have our Fantasy Football Platinum package available for you for rankings and cheat sheets and projections, busts, breakout, sleepers. It's all there. Team previews. It's really all there for you. We'll be with you throughout the entire season. But it's also kind of cool, and I get it, to see, a mock draft and like I said, where guys are going. So we went a little long yesterday, but we're answering some questions there. So I'll dive a little bit deeper from 11 to 20. We'll get into 21 to 30, and then we'll bring Sam on. One thing I did want to mention, maybe we could just show it, Tyler. We'll ask Sam this question as well. We've been running through the NFFC ADPs for like each round, and we really went deep. So it's been a long time since I presented round 1 to you and how it shaped out. And it's a little bit different from, it's almost like, I think, 2.5 months where we presented round 1. There's a couple differences in here. Like Henry has definitely fallen down. Adams has creeped up into the first round. Swift is now comfortably getting drafted into the first round as well. Jonathan Taylor has been really the consensus number one. I've seen a lot of people take Justin Jefferson over Cooper Kupp. I went on a mini rant over, an All in Football for Jake Seeley's show, and I believe the social team, the Tween, had tweeted it out I think yesterday or earlier this week about Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, and this Kupp, this guy being, I think, the safest player in fantasy football, wide receiver in alpha, year two in Matthew Stafford's offense, or I call it Matthew Stafford's offense. Maybe we'll talk to Sam about that as well, as he's dealing with an elbow issue and he's not going to throw next week. Of course, they open up the season week 1 against the Buffalo Bills. I'd like to see him out there on the football field tossing some balls before he plays that vicious Bills defense on opening week. But, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson going, to have the Cooper Kupp role, and Kevin O'Connell leaving, the offensive coordinator for the Rams, going over to Minnesota. Oh, he's going to have the Cooper Kupp role. Guys, Cooper Kupp has the Cooper Kupp role, but we'll get into that board with Sam. I just want to get his thoughts, and I'd like to get your guys' thoughts too, because a lot of fantasy football drafts these days, and I think you should do something like this. There's been some fun things in my leagues, just whether you put names into a hat or you go to a horse race and you assign horse numbers to everybody else to like somebody, and you get the opportunity to pick where you want to draft. And I think that's pretty cool. And there's numerous ways to go about that. Like I said, you can do the simple, write a name in a hat, put all 12 names in the hat, draw it out. And then the first person that gets their name taken out of the hat, it doesn't mean that they get first pick, but they get the first choice of where they want to pick. So where do you guys want to pick? I'll be honest. I mean, I love Jonathan Taylor. I don't think I want number 1. I think I want to live in that 3, 4, 5 range or near the end of the first and kind of double tap out that way. I like where players are going towards the end of rounds and certain drafts that I've taken part in. Anyways, we can present that mock back to you guys next week when it's all said and done. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. Maybe you can leave it in the comments section. You're watching live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Smash the like button. If you have any comments, any questions, leave them there. Mike Omelon in the house. Oh, baby, what a start. Raiders locked in already. A big Raiders fan at Daily Handle. Look who showed up. Here we go. Back and forth. You guys settle down in the chat. Don't want too much arguments here on the Raiders. Win totals 9, 10. What they're going to be at. But a good start for the Raiders last night. Josh McDaniels and company, a big W, preseason W against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Omelon, big deal. Jacobs on the field. First series, second series, big deal. Not so much. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more with Sam, but we're going to dive into running back rankings 11 to 20 here on Mean Streets. Keep it locked.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
Welcome back in. Daily Handle, I wouldn't say that the preseason is meaningless. I know that there weren't a lot of starters playing last night, but I think it's very important, especially for new coaches with new schemes and new players in their system, especially rookies as well. I think it's important to get off to a bit of a strong start in preseason. Some teams, some veteran coaches, some veteran players, you won't see them too much in the preseason, but I wouldn't say it's totally meaningless. Omalon checks in, not a big deal, hard to simulate contact in practice. So that's a good point as well. I think we saw Kenyon Drake go down, and I haven't heard anything significant about it. So maybe it wasn't, too much. Jacobs is really interesting when we can get into running backs. I don't have him inside the top 20, but just in years past, people have always talked about Jacobs. And maybe this is a conversation we could just save for Sam. I'll just say it quickly. In years past, they always made the excuse for Jacobs that, he was on a bad team with the Raiders and that he'd be too game script dependent, and if they were down in games, he wouldn't be on the field to catch passes out of the backfield, and then he'd kind of be useless. But at the end of the day, he always finished in around running back 15 to 22, with being taken off the field in third down. And they draft a guy, they got Kenyon Drake. They bring in Devontae Adams to the squad. Nobody wants to talk about Jacobs at all. Nobody really wants a piece of this guy. And now seeing him on the field in the first and second series and in a preseason game, people are going to move him down the draft board. It's just what happens. So he's actually probably one of the more underrated running backs if you like to avoid running backs at zero RB strategy that Stepmom Lauren had on All in Football last week, where she just avoided the running back position till like round 6, 7, or 8. And Jacobs is kind of hanging around there in round 6 as a guy who the offense is much better. If you feel like Las Vegas is going to score more points this season and get into shootouts inside that division, maybe he won't be taken off the field. Maybe he will continue to rack up some goal line carries. We'll talk to Sam about that in a little bit. Choudhury is hanging by. So we did 1 through 10. No real breaking news through 1 through 10. I mean, it's pretty much consensus. I don't have any crazy takes. You can go back and watch that video. I do like Leonard Fournette. I like Aaron Jones as pass catching backs in a full point setting that I feel like will catch 50 plus balls. And so I think that those guys are definitely valuable. And if you want to start with an alpha wide receiver early in the first round, I'm pretty comfortable taking one or two of those guys at the end of the second. Upside to be maybe a top 5 running back, then you can hammer another running back if you want to. Here's the list that I have 11 to 20. And Omalon, don't steal any of these backs from me, okay? Nick Chubb, as we mentioned yesterday in the mock, he went as RB16 to Marshall. I thought that was absolutely crazy value for Nick Chubb, a guy that has just been very, very consistent over the course of his career. And out of all of these names on this list, he is going to be the guy that has the fewest catches out of the backfield. He will. 20 grabs last season, 25 targets, only played 14 games, but Nick Chubb Kareem Hunt's still on that roster. I have been to a Cleveland game where I saw Nick Chubb catch 5 passes in a game, and he can do that. But as long as Kareem Hunt is on the roster, you're always going to have a little bit of a weird feeling watching Nick Chubb play and watching this Browns offense, operate, especially in the red zone. Sometimes you see Kareem Hunt, sometimes on, third down, you see Kareem Hunt as well. And it ticks you off a little bit when you're a Nick Chubb owner, because he is one of the best runners in the game, maybe the best pure runner in the NFL. 5.2 yards per carry as a rookie, 5 in year 2, 5.6 in year 3. Last year, 5.5, 1,000 yards in every single. Can we call his rookie season 1,000 yards, 996 yards? I think we can. He's had 1,000 yards in every single season. And he is just a lock and loaded running back that is going to touch the ball 20 times. So, you see him fall down draft boards. RB16, I think, is crazy, crazy value. I still think he's a strong RB1. There's a couple guys on this list that could be, we could call them risky picks. We could call them potential league winners, boom or bust guys. Alvin Kamara is one, is a guy that we've seen finish as a top 5 running back multiple times over the course of his career. And now there's the thought and cloud over his head of a potential suspension. So this is why you're getting him as RB12. I've seen him fall to the 3rd round. I've seen him fall to the 4th round. When I did the Independence Day Invitational on Sirius XM, he was a 4th round pick. In our mock draft, he was not. He was a 2nd round pick. So I can't really give you anything concrete about what's going to happen with him in the future, if there's going to be a suspension or not. There's multiple reports that, this suspension could happen next season. And this is why he is going where he's going. I'm fine, taking the risk on him if he's going to fall outside the top 12, but I do have some concerns overall with the offense. No Sean Payton. They ran the ball a lot. They didn't throw the ball really at all. Like, it wasn't Jameis Winston chucking it 40 plus times like his days in Tampa. He was throwing it sub 30 times per game. No Payton inside that offense. From a pace of play standpoint, they ran very, very slow. But they do have Michael Thomas coming back. The reports are pretty good, actually. That is looking good in practice. Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry. So they do have some weapons there. The offense could be pretty good if they let Jameis buck. Saquon is that other guy that's pretty risky at this point. Daily Handle was in here the other day calling him, injury prone. And I think Eric Young clapped back at you pretty aggressively that he felt like some of the injuries that Saquon has had over the past couple of years have been pretty fluky injuries. But there's no denying that he could be a league winner. Like, he could be a top 5 running back. I don't think anybody would be shocked if he finished as a top 5 running back. There have been some concerns injury wise, certainly play calling, offensive line, but I think the Giants did okay in the draft. They revamped their offensive line. Brian Dable, did wonders with Josh Allen and company. And again, preseason and training camp, you don't want to get over the moon when certain things happen. You take it with a grain of salt, but seeing some highlights from the Giants training camp and guys in motion, I think that's awesome. I think that's great news for not only Saquon Barkley, for Daniel Jones, for everybody. They didn't run any motion. Tyler's a Giants fan. He knows it. He's sick of hearing me say this, that they ran a quarterback sneak on 3rd and 8 from their own 8 or 9 last year. There's no creativity at all in this offense. Saquon had a moment last year against the Saints where he was explosive through the air as a pass catcher and on the ground. And it looked a lot like Saquon in his first season as a rookie. I don't think he can get back to that season. But man, the offensive line is better. There's going to be more creativity inside this offense. Jason Garrett just could not call any plays. So I am in on Saquon, taking the risk. I'm not fully in, like Eric said. He said he was completely in. He was going to try to take him in every single draft. I think that's kind of risky to do something like that. If you play in a couple leagues, sure. You play in 10 leagues, you're probably not taking Saquon in every single league. But he does have a league-winning upside. The other risky play on that list, Tyler, I think it's Travis Etienne. I think it is. I think Etienne is slightly risky as well. We didn't see him at all last season. We don't know what to expect. The Jags offensive line is not great. It sounds like James Robinson could be ready to go week 1, so there could be a bit of a timeshare there. Other names that are towards the bottom of that list that could be risky, David Montgomery. You're starting to hear reports about Montgomery, working with special teams. Like, I don't really like to hear that sort of stuff this time of the season, but there's no denying that David Montgomery has been, maybe slightly overrated when he came out of college. A lot of people ranked him as a top 10 running back, a top 12 running back. I was kind of in that, in that grouping as well. I thought he could be a low end or RB1 or a strong RB2, but looking at last year, pretty strong in terms of 13 games, just shy of 900 yards. He had 7 touchdowns. He got 42 passes. And I think that's the underlying thing that nobody really talks about in Montgomery's game. No Tariq Cohen. He hasn't been, healthy over the past couple seasons. I don't believe they really have a pass catching running back on the squad that's going to get sprinkled in. I like the prospect of Khalil Herbert as well. I think potentially he could be, we already saw what he could be if there was no Montgomery. He's a guy that's going to touch the ball 20 plus times in this offense, can carry the rock, can catch out of the backfield. He's got a quick first step and he's pretty explosive. And when you look at this Bears roster, they did nothing to help Justin Fields. Nothing. Pringle, come on, let's be real. Pringle, Velus Jones is like a 26-year-old wide receiver out of college. It's kind of like a gadget player. Darnell Mooney's the only guy. We all want Cole Kmet to take that step forward. He's one of 2 players with 60 grabs and no touchdowns. I expect him to find the end zone this year, but it's going to be a run-heavy offense. I think we'll see a lot of Montgomery, certainly going to see a lot of Fields. He averaged over 50 rushing yards per game over the last 7 games of the season last year, and you're going to get a lot of Herbert too. So I have some concerns with Montgomery, but for a guy that has caught 96 passes over the last 2 years, there's something to be said about that. There's certainly some value. Tyler, let's bring up this board one more time before we actually get into one of my favorites overall. I don't think we need to do Williams and Melvin Gordon again, but if people haven't been hanging out and watching the show, Tyler, if you have that board handy, don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have the Williams and Gordon split board handy, by all means, you can chuck that up. James Conner, I'm not in on. And in fact, I'm a little uneasy about this ranking. 3.7 yards per carry, not efficient at all, but he did rack up a ton of touchdowns, and he probably will be the goal line back if they've eased Kyler off a little bit in terms of running it in himself. He certainly can, but the rushing attempts were down last season significantly. The rushing yards went from like 800 to 400, and we saw Connor get a lot of work inside the red zone, and Darrell Williams brought in to just take that Chase Edmonds role. Zeke is on that list too. A down year for Zeke. Nobody wants Zeke. This time last year, he was getting drafted as a top 5 running back. He finished as RB6 in fantasy points per game standpoint. Overall, he's a top 15 running back. A down year, and he still had 1,000 yards, and he still had 10 touchdowns, and it's still a pretty good offense. The offensive line is not as great this year. They're missing some pieces in Dallas, but ultimately, Zeke is still going to eat, guys. I think he's actually a pretty good value. In the mock, he went in the second round as like RB10. That's a little early. You don't have to take him that early. If you feel really strong about Zeke and you're picking early in the first, I guess you make that call like Daniel did. He knew that Zeke wouldn't be back to him by the time it came back in the third round. But this is a guy that certainly could finish as a top 10 running back. Again, if you attack your draft with like wide receiver, Zeke could be there for you as RB1. But don't be fooled. Tony Pollard was more efficient than him. He was better between the tackles. He had more receiving yards on fewer targets and catches than Zeke. Zeke had a career low in terms of attempts and targets and catches. So the change in guard is happening. Jerry Jones can say whatever the heck he wants to say. We can buy that. I wouldn't fully. He's not calling all the shots in Dallas. He did sign Zeke significantly. He gave him that, 4th overall pick a few years ago and signed him to a lengthy contract. He doesn't want to look like a fool, so he's going to say things like that. But Tony Pollard has looked like the better running back over the past year and a half. So don't think that Pollard's not going to go away. Line up in the slot. They're missing a lot of guys, pass catching guys. He can line up in the slot. He can line out wide. They can line up 2 running back sets. It could certainly happen for him. But let's bring up that board one more time. I didn't really touch on Breece Hall. I think he can be a bell cow back when Michael Carter's in there. It's all about Cam Akers for me, guys. Cam Akers. I don't understand why this guy is falling to like the 4th round of drafts. I don't get it. And I think if I'm guessing why, there are some people that like Darrell Henderson. There really are. And when you stack up Akers and Henderson over the last 2 years, and you look at some analytics and you look at like length of runs and things like that, you will see that Henderson actually kind of grades out pretty well, slightly better than Cam Akers. And we just heard Sean McVay say he's got 2 running backs. So you hear that, and then people will move Akers down their board or they'll move Henderson up their board. But let's be real about Darrell Henderson. This guy always has something going off. Soft tissue issues already has. This season has had reports of soft muscle tissue issues. And to me, that is a big concern. You know, they drafted him in the 3rd round. What did they do the following year? Sean McVay drafted Cam Akers in the 3rd round. Akers went down. He immediately brought in another back. After drafting a couple other backs last season, they brought in Sony Michel. Karen Williams is not a guy that you need to be concerned about coming in and stealing touches from Cam Akers or first down opportunities. He's just not that type of back. I don't really believe in him, and he's already suffered an injury as well. Cam Akers, I think, part of it is the efficiency, and it was not there last season. Looking at some of his games, 17 for 55, 24 for 48, 13 for 48, 13 for 21. Those are the 4 playoff games that he played last year. But keep in mind, those 4 defenses that he played, Arizona, Tampa, San Fran, Cincy, all top 10 defenses against the run last year. 67 carries. That, to me, is what's very telling. Coming off an Achilles injury, coming back as quick as he did, and Sean McVay Daily Handle loves to say this, says it all the time. Bright stage, bright lights on the big stage, under the bright lights. You certainly butchered that one, Daily Handle. But that's telling to me that this guy, off that Achilles injury, even though he wasn't efficient, 2.6 yards per carry on those 67 carries, he still got those carries and he got those touches. There was a game against Tampa where he fumbled the ball twice, and Akers got the ball back right away. Sean McVay did not care about that. He gave him the rock. 8 catches on 10 targets in those 4 playoff games as well. He's a guy that can catch 25 plus passes in this offense. The offensive line is still fine, even without Whitworth there. The offense is going to be good this season. The NFC is not great. The conference is not all that competitive. The division is Seattle's not that good anymore. San Fran's going to hang around. Arizona's got some issues as well. Cam Akers, if you just go back and look at the last 8 games from Cam Akers, and I'll wrap up on this note. The last 8 games for Akers, 4 from the regular season when he went off as a rookie towards the end of the season. He really took control of the offense. And then not including the game, I think it was week 18 where he came back from the Achilles injury and he had 5 carries for 3 yards. And he actually caught 3 passes on 3 targets. So he did have 8 touches in his first game. let's cross that one out. Let's look at the 4 playoff games and the 4 regular season games from his rookie season. 19.1 carries, 21.1 touches, 2 catches per game. Let's put that over the course of a full season. Of course, things can happen. Injuries can happen. Of course, I guess he's a risk as well to have a bit of a setback, but everything looks good so far in camp. That's 358 touches, 324 carries. 324 carries would have been second in the NFL last season behind Jonathan Taylor. Now, Derrick Henry missed some time, and he was on pace for like 500 touches. So we can include Derrick Henry in there, not having the injury, him maybe finishing second in carries. But third overall, Cam Akers in carries in this offense with the Rams, 34 grabs, absolutely sign me up. I have him ranked as RB13. He's going as RB18, RB19 in drafts. You can get him in the 4th round. Don't shy away from Cam Akers. The guy is a stud. McVay likes him. All the touches headed his way. And don't buy into the reports about Darrell Henderson. Forget it. If you're really that worried about Cam Akers, just draft them both. Then you have that Rams backfield, and away you go. Sam's in here next. We're going to get into Omalan's Las Vegas Raiders. He has a high-stakes draft tonight as well. I want to get his thoughts on where he would like to draft in the first round, who he's targeting early, maybe a couple late-round sleepers from him as well. Lots still to get to here on Game Plus Network. Don't go anywhere.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
All right, welcome in. All these new commercials. I like them in between the show here. So that one kind of threw me off. I wasn't ready for that one to come back. But on the spot here, Sam Choudhury in the house. Welcome in, sir. FTN haven't, we chat here and there on the Slack, and I officially, welcomed you to the squad. But I want to do it here. Congratulations, FTN. We're super happy to have you, dude. You are pumping out content nonstop. Like, it is nonstop, and I absolutely love it. You're doing a lot of best ball drafts as well. So welcome in. Love the content. And I want to pick your brain on a couple things. We'll save the Raiders maybe for the next block. We'll hang on. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. I know you just wrote an article over at FTN Fantasy about the Las Vegas Raiders, but you are taking part in a high-stakes draft tonight, right, with Vlad Sedler. Do you know what pick you have? Do you have any early round plans and how that's going to go for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually picking at number 2, which was nice. 2 was my first option. So I had it at 2, 3, and 4 as my first 3 options. So yeah, I was pretty happy that I got my first choice.
Okay, 2, 3, and 4. Tyler, let's bring up that board and let's give. I know Sam knows this, and we talked about it in the opening block, but this is on average, dude. Over the last month here, NFFC drafts, high stakes leagues, people putting their money on the line. This is kind of how things have shaped up. So you were picking early. What's your plan? This is where you want to be in drafts. Can you explain why you want to be there in drafts? Is it because you like, one of these players in the top 5, maybe more than others, or like, is it because you're interested in what could be there available to you in the second round? Why that pick?
Yeah, so I was actually so I hadn't played in NFFC before, and I was looking at the ADP, and I was originally going to pick number 3, assuming it was like the underdog ADP. But I'm really targeting Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. So I was planning on picking 3 and 4, and I saw the ADP that you pulled up that Kupp was number 2. So I decided to play it safe and pick number 2 as my option. So I mean that's sort of how I've been approaching drafts, is like I want to start off in the first round with the wide receiver. I think the drop off between wide receiver and running back is a lot more drastic between the first and the second round. I mean, you could say Jonathan Taylor and CMC are almost in a tier of their own, which, I mean, it's at midnight. I can pivot to CMC if I want to, but I don't know. I just really like the way the drafts have set up when I can start Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson and come around the second round with the running back that I like.
I couldn't agree more, actually. That's what I've been saying on this show as well. I like to have that early spot. When I did a high stakes draft, we streamed it from the NFFC account a couple weeks ago. I had the 4th pick, and Kupp fell to me at that spot, and I was pretty happy about that. So I was like, Kupp or Jefferson. That was kind of my thought process going in. So if you don't get that, can we bring up this board one more time, Tyler? If you don't get that early pick, and you are picking, say, anywhere from 7 to 12. Who jumps out at you on that board from 7 to 12? You mentioned the drastic fall off at the running back position. Are you still going alpha wideout? We'll get into Adams in a little bit, but are you still going would you go Adams? Would you go Diggs, or would you take one of those running backs?
Yeah, I know you said we're gonna get into the Raiders soon, but the way I had it set up was I wanted one of the top 4 picks to get Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson, and if not, I wanted to be in the back end, from the 10 to 12 area, because I'd love to start with Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs. And I mean, this is a bit different because usually you have Diggs over Adams, but I think, like I said, if I could lock up someone in the first tier of wide receivers, and then with the way the third round reversal is, you can get your Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, come back with your workhorse running back. And then I think there's a pretty big teardrop just in players from the top of the third round to the back of the third round. So and since I'm picking at the top in this one, I'll have a later third round pick. But the way that the draft board shakes up, if I can go Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs, come back with the running back, and then the third round, you have your choices of like the top tier wide receivers in the third round. And some drafts you can get like a Nick Chubb to fall to the third round, which I'm okay with. But I like in the third round, DJ Moore at the top, those group of wide receivers that you can start off with as well. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of, I think the running backs for me are more in the middle of the round. So the way I had it set up in preference was go to get one of the top tier receivers or a Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs at the back of the first round.
Who are the running backs that you think in the second there when it comes back to you, like an Aaron Jones, a Leonard Fournette? You mentioned Chubb has been falling to the third round. Heck, in our FTN Mucky one is RB16. I thought that was just crazy.
Wow.
Crazy value
Yeah.
for Nick Chubb there. I still think he's one of the best pure runners in the NFL, even if he's only going to catch 25 passes or so. I'll throw a couple names at you. If it comes back in the second, say, I wouldn't imagine Saquon's there. He's kind of jumping up, but his ADP 16. No. If say Saquon is gone, Javonte, Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb, Kamara, those guys are staring at you as your potential RB1. Who would you pick?
I would say Aaron Jones, but I mean the three that you mentioned, Aaron Jones, Fournette, Kamara, like I said, I picked those spots because I'm pretty confident that I can get one of the three. So that's how I like to start off with my draft. And, I think all of those guys have, top 5 RB potential. So
Yeah, they do. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick break. I don't mind if you could hang out for a couple segments. We'll do the Raiders in this next block, but there's some Bucks news as well. Like Mike Evans got a hamstring injury. Godwin is back. So I want to get your thoughts on the Bucks overall and maybe get a target out of you as well. Just not an early round target, maybe somebody else. In fact, you mentioned Jones. Maybe we'll bring up the Green Bay Packers backfield because it is a potential timeshare there. Is Jones worthy of a top 10 pick? Is Dillon a steal for where he's going as well? So we'll touch on all that, but Raiders here next. Keep her locked. Chris Meaney and Sam Choudhury of FTN SC_FFB here with you on Game Plus Network. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. So last night, the NFL season got underway. It was a preseason game, but it's finally here. We're going to have at least college football and NFL the rest of the way here up until February, which is super exciting. And I know that you're excited as well. Draft season is also officially here. We're talking to Sam about some of his draft targets and things like that. But first, I want to address the Las Vegas Raiders with you. You just had an article that came up over at FTNFantasy.com. We are wrapping up, I think, what will be the best division in the NFL this season. The AFC West, Kansas City favorite at plus 175. The Chargers at 220. The Broncos at 260. The Raiders here long shots to win the division. You can get plus 650 over at DraftKings. They are 25-1 to win the conference. The win total is at 8.5. You saw last year they had 10 Ws. NFL record like 6 walk-offs. They were really good in overtime. They won all those close games. It probably should have beat the Bengals, to be honest, at the very end. And the Bengals went on to go to the Super Bowl. So it's a really good season for Las Vegas. You could call them lucky. You could call them unlucky. A lot of things happened. Coaching change midway through the season. Some off-field drama with Henry Ruggs. A lot of things happened last year in Las Vegas. Got to give them credit for making the postseason. I put wildcard odds here because it is a really good division, Sam, clearly. So we could see 3 teams make the playoffs from this division, and they are long shots to win the Super Bowl at 40-1. Chandler Jones is a really good addition. Devontae Adams we touched on as well. What do you make of this team overall? Before we get into their fantasy weapons, what do you make of Las Vegas? Do you feel like they're a playoff squad? Are people sleeping on them? Did the Chiefs come down a little bit? Everybody else seemed to improve in this division, Sam, and the Raiders are also one of the teams that certainly improve. When you get one of the best wide receivers in football and pass rushers, you're improved.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. We could see 3 teams out of this division go to the playoffs. I mean, I personally think we will see 3 teams from the division go to the playoffs. And, you know, it's unfortunate for the Raiders because you put them in any other division and they seem like a lock to make the playoffs, if not win that division. You know, so I think I think they'll be battling it out for a wild card berth when it comes to it. I think the Chargers and the Chiefs are at the top of the division. I actually like the Chargers to win the division, but between Denver and the Raiders, I think one of them will for sure sneak into the wild card. But like I said, it's unfortunate they're playing in the AFC West because it's just been an arms race all off season. And the Raiders went all in with Devontae Adams, but I'm pretty optimistic about the Raiders team for sure. And I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they ended up making a deep playoff run.
I'm just looking at their schedule. Of course, the division is going to be such a bloodbath, right? Like to battle it out with with those three teams twice a year. Like they start in LA against the Chargers, and what an entertaining finish it was last year. I thought we were going to get a tie, get both of these teams
Me too.
in there. It was looking like that for sure, but the Raiders decided to walk off again. So at LA to face the Chargers, then certainly winnable games against Arizona and Tennessee. Then they face Denver and KC. Then they got the bye. Out of the bye, they got Houston, so a very winnable game. You expect them to get that W. At New Orleans, which will be a tough one for them, but they had success against the Saints a couple years ago when they opened up in that brand new stadium that they have. Jacksonville, Indy, Denver, Seattle, and then it gets tough. I feel like towards the end of the season, they're going to have a strong start. Like there's certainly winnable games there, Sam. As I mentioned, Houston and Seattle, like those seem to be layups. The Colts are not going to be a layup. It's going to be a tough one. But the way that they finished from like week 13 to week 18, the Chargers, the Rams, the Pats, the Steelers is a bit of a soft one, but it is on the road. The Niners and the Chiefs. So this is a team that's they're really going to have a very, very strong start. Daily Handle asks, do you guys think the Raiders will be in the AFC wildcard game? So I think you kind of answered that you don't feel like they'll win the division. You do like two teams, maybe three teams to make the playoffs, but give me the order. You go Chargers 1, Chiefs 2,
And
Broncos
then,
3, Raiders 4. Is that what you're doing?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me, I think. But between I can see the Raiders, vying with the Denver Broncos, for that last wild card spot when it comes down to it. But yeah, I think you mentioned my leaderboards, right?
Okay, let's get into some of their weapons as we transition over to, again, NFFC high stakes leagues. These last 5 weeks here, Sam. Derek Carr going as quarterback 13. So he's jumped up just a little bit. He was inside the top 5 in passing yards. He's actually finished around quarterback 14, 15, multiple times over the course of his career. He does have a season with MVP votes, believe it or not, when he had Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper on his squad before he suffered that season-ending leg injury. But now he's got a guy in Devontae Adams. Josh Jacobs talked off the top of the show, getting some work yesterday in the Hall of Fame game. Samir White also getting some work. Hunter Renfrow in there had a fantastic season. He was the best waiver wire pickup, in my opinion. Cordell Patterson, Elijah Mitchell, certainly at the running back position, but a really underrated wide receiver, a great route runner, and a great pass catcher, and certainly the trust of Derek Carr and company. And then Darren Waller is highlighted here. So George has put the curse on Waller because he's on the graphic. But his first game was lights out in terms of targets. And then he had some issues staying healthy. But let's talk about the weapons. I think we should talk about Adams and Carr. We got a board here, if anybody hasn't seen it, of the numbers from the 2013 season at Fresno State. This is video game-like stuff, Sam, right? I mean, for one season, 50 passing touchdowns, almost 6,000 yards. Adams, almost 1,800 yards and 20 receiving touchdowns. Like, my goodness, there's players in the NFL that won't have the numbers that Adam had in that college season, in a 3-4 year campaign. What do you make of this duo? You already talked about how you like Adams as an alpha, as a top 5 wide receiver, but what about Derek Carr? Would you be comfortable as Derek Carr as your starting quarterback?
Yeah, I think the market's pricing Derek Carr pretty accurately. He's going around where he finished last season, but then you got to take into account that we didn't have Trey Lance last season. Russell Wilson missed a handful of games. There's no Lamar Jackson. So even though he's going off around where he finished last season, it is still a boost up. And, I think everyone recognizes what Derek Carr has available to him. We saw what Hunter Renfrow did last season. He finished as a top 10 wide receiver. Derek Carr Darren Waller missed 6 games. And Derek Carr still barely finished outside the QB1. And he only had 23 touchdowns, throwing for over 4,800 yards. So with a guy like Devontae Adams, you got to think that his passing touchdowns go up. And yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with going with Derek Carr as a QB1. And those best ball drafts, you can get Derek Carr as your QB1 and tack on 2 other later quarterbacks, and that's a lot more appealing. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty fair where he's going.
It's a pretty cheap stack, right? If you get your hands on Adams, then you could easily make Waller or Renfro work there. And I have a lot of Derek Carr shares. I mean, a month ago, I felt like he could get him. Geez, even 2 months ago, we talked about like some underrated quarterbacks, and I know a lot has changed in best ball and underdog. You've been doing a lot of drafts, and of course things will change. Like the value is out the door at this time of the season, but he was going as like quarterback 18, 19, 20. I was like, okay, sure. Like absolutely sign me up at that point. So I am comfortable leaving my draft with him as my QB1, in your standard 12-team league where you just roster one quarterback. There's always going to be a couple available on the waiver wire to help you out there. I do like Trey Lance as well. I think I would go Lance ahead of him, but Carr is real nice once Wilson and those guys come off the board. What about the other weapons? I got about a minute or so. If you had the choice, I mean, they're kind of going in around like a little bit of the same range, right? With Waller and Renfro. How do you attack the tight end position? Are you paying that price for Waller? And do you think Renfro can repeat on last season?
Yeah, I mean, I think this at ADP 55, I think it's a pretty good price tag for Waller. On sites like Underdog, he's going in the 4th round, in the 45, 43 range. So, I think tight end 4 is pretty fair. I think you can make a case for having Kittle over him, but, I think they're pretty interchangeable. And at ADP 55, that's about where Kittle goes on Underdog. And Waller's a lot more pricier, but looking at this ADP, I'll take Waller 55. And, like I said, I love Adams at the back of the 1st round. But, I'm not really into Jacobs this season. You hit on it at the top of the show, but I think Hunter Renfro is sort of a floor option. It's hard to see him. I think wide receiver 33 is fine for him, but when you got guys like Devontae Adams and Darren Waller, it's kind of hard to see him hit a ceiling. But yeah, I really like Waller's ADP 55 here.
Yeah, 128 targets, and a lot of those targets came when he was just the guy, right? It was like Waller wasn't healthy and had a ton of targets. There's multiple games here, 8 catches, 9 catches, 13 catches. It's hard to kind of put that, like in those 3 games, he had 100 yards. It's hard to kind of feel like he'll have those type of games. Like there may be 1 or 2 again, but consistently to do that with a guy like Adams and Waller on the field. But man, he's going to be wide open one-on-one coverage in the middle of the field, and he's a terrific route runner, right? So, like, I think he's fine if you get him as your wide receiver 4. I think that's terrific. If you can plug him in as your flex weekly, I think that's fantastic. Let's break. We'll bring you back one more time. I got to get your thoughts on the Green Bay backfield, and we'll touch on Tampa quickly. Lots more to get to here on Mean Streets. Don't go anywhere. Talking to Sam Choudhury here on Game Plus Network. You can find him on Twitter, SC_FFB. Dude, I got to ask you about this Green Bay Packers backfield. I know you touched on Aaron Jones. I like Jones. Everybody seems to like Jones. You see the numbers on the left. Now, he missed a couple games, but he still finished his RB11, 15.3 fantasy points per game in a PPR setting. He's going as RB11. We addressed that. I got him ranked as RB10. Over on the right, though, A.J. Dillon, right? He was definitely involved in the offense. He was treated as a bell cow back when Jones was missing time. He still caught a bunch of balls too, right? 34 catches. We know that Adams is gone. We just talked about that. Who's going to step up at the wide receiver position? I feel like this is just going to be a heavy run team with both of these guys catching a ton of passes. You like Jones, but talking about Dillon, like, is this guy a sneaky value, and could he finish as like a top 15 running back?
Yeah, I'm trying to come away in every draft with one of the Green Bay Packers running backs. If I don't get Jones, I make Dillon a priority, in the 6th round. And you have the screen pulled up. Dillon last year, he led the Packers in rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, rushing yards, and he finished as the RB 23 last season, and now he's going at RB 24. And this is an offense that I think is going to go solely through the two running backs. So I'm loving both Packers running backs where they're going, and they're always a target in my draft.
And towards the end of the season, we started to see AJ, Aaron has a nose for the end zone, but AJ too, like, he's just built like a truck to get in from the 2, from the 5. And we started to see that a little bit more. I think both of these guys will combine for like 100 catches out of the backfield. I think that's really, really valuable for sure. Okay, we got about a minute or so. Want to get your thoughts on the Bucs. Mike Evans goes down with a hamstring injury. Godwin is back. You see here where they've been going. Godwin's moved up a little bit since the news that he will be ready for week 1. Cameron Brate, not so much anymore with Kyle Rudolph on the squad. But talk to me about Tampa. Are you in on Godwin? Are you concerned about Evans now? And, Julio Jones now a member of this team, which is just, I guess, good news for Tom Brady.
Yeah, this injury doesn't really concern me. They're saying it's a hamstring injury, but Godwin's a wide receiver that I've been targeting all offseason. He's going at the wide receiver 28 outside of the wide receiver 2 territory. And before he got hurt, he was the wide receiver 6. And, it's a little different in redraft because you can plug in the hole while Godwin recovers. But, you're getting a wide receiver 28 that was a wide receiver 6 last season. That's incredible value. And it looks like he's ready for week 1. So if you have your early Godwin shares, you're sitting pretty right now. And I think Brady took a big dip too when it looked like Godwin was going to miss the beginning of the season. Gronk retired. And, as much as I like Lance, Brady is almost 6 spots cheaper than him. And, I'll take Brady at that price all day. So I'm not really concerned about the Bucs. It's another team that I'm really heavy on. And I like where all their pieces are going right now.
And Brady can support all of these guys. He threw the ball more than anybody. He led everybody in passing yards and touchdowns, and the pace of play. They were up tempo, and the pass percentage was like 66% using some of our tools, which was number 1 as well. And you just know they just blow teams out. They don't care. Brady's getting back. He's getting his, and he's chucking. I love it. Sam, appreciate this, man. Good luck tonight in the draft. I'd love to have you back on before we get going. Maybe we can chat a little bit more about some of your targets, but Sam's got some great stuff over at FTN at fantasy.com. Give him a follow, SC_FFB. Goodbye, buddy. We will see you soon. You take a deuce, you flush it, and you move on. Jalen Hurts.
Yes, sir.
We got MLB picks in here next. Keep her locked. Welcome in one final time. We got a couple MLB picks for you, but a friendly reminder, MLB Dream, myself, Frank Brank, will be with you on Game Plus Network in just a little bit, actually, at 6 Eastern, and we'll have it live at 1:30 Eastern, FTN Network YouTube page. Tyler, you want to check up these picks for the peeps? Here we go. Robbie Ray over 7.5 strikeouts against the Halos. He faced them earlier in the season. He punched 10 guys out through 7, only gave up 3 hits. The Halos are awful at the game of baseball. 24% strikeout rate against lefties. That's the 6th highest mark. They're bottom 5 in WOBA, WRC plus, OPS against lefties as well. They got no power despite actually having 7 home runs yesterday, all solo shots, and they still lost. So I'm taking Seattle. Ohtani had 2 bumps. That's what you always see with the Angels. Ohtani and Trout, big games, and the Angels still find a way to lose. But Robbie Ray over the strikeouts, Seattle on the money line, Houston on the money line with Valdez on the hill. He's allowed 3 runs or fewer in 19 of his 20 starts this season against Cleveland. And then Eric Lauer over 5.5 strikeouts at -120. He's got a 9K per 9, a 2.85 ERA at home, a 10.1 swinging strike percentage over the last 2 seasons, and the Reds inside the top 5 in strikeout percentage against Southpaws. So we can get that one at -120. More picks on MLB Picks and Props around the diamond, presented by Game Plus Network. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Cheers.